Get $10 off your next $50 or more purchase when you sign up for text alerts from Academy Sports and Outdoors. Text the word fishing to 22369. Once again, that's fishing to 22369. Offer expires 7/31 of 2022, and message and data rates may apply.
Fisherman's Post. More fish, more often.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Fisherman's Post Saltwater Podcast Series. This episode is titled Summer Redfish on High Tide, and I'm going to be talking to Captain Mason Porter of Grand Slam Fishing Charters out of the Carolina Beach area. We're going to be talking about bait selection, rigs, locations, how to approach, and techniques. My name is Gary Hurley of Fisherman's Post. Fisherman's Post has been serving the saltwater fishing community of North Carolina since 2003. We've been bringing you fishing reports, fishing information, fishing tournaments, fishing schools, and now the popular Saltwater Podcast Series. And it is in this Saltwater Podcast Series that we reach out to our captain and guide friends from up and down the North Carolina coast and ask them to share with us their insights, their knowledge on how to catch more fish more often. And in this endeavor, I am joined every week by my partner, Billy Thorpe of Thorpe Creative. Billy, we're back in the podcast seat.
Dude, we are back in the podcast seat, Gary. We're back in the studio. So we just set up another studio, or I set up a studio for my stuff, and now we're here, man. I can see you in person across the in front of the other camera. It looks like we're in two totally different spaces, but we're actually in the same spot if you're watching it. But yeah, man, always good to talk fishing. Always good to have people on here to inspire our listeners and our viewers, man. I actually met someone the other day at a local tackle shop, and so he was showing me all these fish he caught. He's like, dude, I listen to your podcast and all this. So that was really cool. I mean, that doesn't happen often, but it was definitely cool that we were able to connect and see that we're making a difference, Gary.
I'm guessing he showed you fish photos and not actual fish.
Yeah, fish. That's what I should have said. Fish photos. And I told him to send them in to you. I said, here's Gary's personal number. Text him. Make sure that you, send this to the right guy. So you should be getting those anytime. And if
Sweet.
if you guys want, I will put Gary's number on the screen, and you all can text him and tell him your fish stories and your fish photos. So it'll be good.
Oh, I'd never get tired of hearing about a fish story. Never.
And really, he likes the ones. I know you like the ones that the big ones that got off. Like, you love those stories. So.
I just like long stories with lots of details. That's what I like.
Oh, man. Well, too much fun, Gary. Well, I definitely want to shout out to our sponsors. So, first of all, we'll jump over to Marine Warehouse Center real quick.
Marine Warehouse, we have everything. We have new boats, we have parts, we have accessories, new trailers. We have a complete service department with highly trained technicians. Anything you need to get out on the water, we have it.
At Marine Warehouse Center, as we've grown over the last few years, now have a large section of marine supplies from start to finish for all your boating needs.
What I love about this region is to be able to get out on the water, and also we love to be able to get you out on the water.
The best part of working at Marine Warehouse is being able to get involved with the customers and share a love for the water.
There you go, Gary. That's the crew right there, man.
They are.
That's the crew.
Man, they recently fished
guys.
the Spanish Mackerel Open. They fish all the trail events. As I say, man, they are part of the fishing community, not just trying to sell or serve the fishing community, which they are. They are trying to sell and serve to the fishing community. But they are absolutely part of it too, man. And I think that's part of why the relationship works so well.
Yeah, 100%.
Emmett, Terrell, although Terrell and I had a falling out, man. The guy just finally was texting me at the wrong times, trying to tell me a joke. So I blocked him, man. I blocked his cell number.
You blocked it?
I have no jokes. No more fish jokes from Terrell. You'll have to go to Marine Warehouse Center in person.
Well, that stinks, Gary. Well, I do have some news about Emmett. However, I'm going to put everyone on the edge of their chair. I'm going to talk about our other sponsor for this episode, Bland Landscaping, really quickly before we jump into it. But want to shout out Bland Landscaping Company. Amazing company. They are actively, obviously, looking for work, looking for people in the North Carolina area to hire them, to bring them on. But they're also looking for staff, for employees. And they have all levels, Gary, of different opportunities there. So really, really good opportunities as well. So go to their website, Bland Landscaping, rather. Can't talk there, but and go check out all the opportunities across North Carolina. And who knows, maybe if you work for them, they'll hook you up with a cool hat like I got here.
It's a cool hat. I'll give you that. That is a dope hat.
Yeah, man, I like it. They sent us a few, so I like them. I'm wearing them. I like them. But man, to kind of circle back a little bit to Emmett, he's been off his rocker a little bit. You know, I know it's been a long few years, but you know, when he was like, I love this region, I'm like, you haven't been in this region because we've been seeing pictures of him from different places. So, Gary, your job is to guess where in the world is Emmett.
Where
Stoffel?
in the world?
Where in the world is he?
Emmett? All right, I'm in. I'll guess. Do I guess right now?
I'll give you a couple of hints. Okay, so one, this is an event, so that is your first hint, and it is an event that you probably did as a child on your parents' bed with other siblings, or if you don't have siblings, think of people who do. And what event would they participate in?
A pillow fight.
That is a great guess, Gary. That is a wonderful guess because that is what Emmett has been doing. He has been at professional pillow fights at an undisclosed location. Looks like some really nice Southern people who match and lots of feathers there. So there's Emmett. He's having a great time.
All right. Smiling Emmett at a pillow fight. Good for him. I'm glad he works hard. I'm glad he's getting some reprieve. Good for him.
Yeah, so if you guys don't see Emmett around the shop, he's probably at a pillow fight this week.
I like how this is setting up.
And please
So stop by and ask Emmett about pillow fighting is where we're going, right?
And if you're real brave, take a pillow in and see how quick he is.
And film it and send it to us.
And it will make the podcast 100% guaranteed. Oh, we probably just started.
Why did we waste our time with Terrell's dumb jokes this long? Holy cow.
Emmett's the one doing all the action over there. Oh my! I'm excited to see where it will be next week. But enjoy your pillow fight, Terrell or Emmett. Sorry.
All right. Well, what I am going to make note of, as we've been doing in all our shows, is the weekly fishing reports project that we're doing. That's the Inshore weekly fishing reports delivered in audio and video format via fishermanspost.com. Just go to the website, look for member content, and you can sign up. There is a small fee, but again, you're getting weekly fishing reports where we talk to 11 local inshore guides from up and down the entire North Carolina coast, talk to each one from anywhere from 4 to 7 minutes. And, knowledge is power, and you want to be in the know. So fishermanspost.com. Member content. How about that, Billy? How'd I do?
Man, Gary, it was great, man. I think you rehearsed that maybe a couple times or
no. I just wung it.
Well, that's pretty good. So, and that's only if you want to be like this person and catch all these fish. Here's Chris Franklin with a 22-inch red drum that was hooked on a live mullet while fishing a rising tide near Bald Head Island. I'm 100% sure. I don't know this for a fact, but just going with the gut that he probably is a member of Fishing Reports, Gary. That's how I got that.
We're going to assume that for marketing purposes.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume that anyone that catches a fish has done the weekly fishing reports, or else you just couldn't do it.
That dude had no chance without Fishing Reports.
No chance. You could tell by looking at him. Even though that photo's from last year, I think.
What are you giving me old photos? What the heck,
maybe,
Gary?
Maybe.
What the heck?
I was in a rush.
All right.
Billy's best
takeaway.
takeaway. That's my hard turn because I want to bring Mason Porter
Let's
up.
go.
So when I finish talking with Mason, I'm going to come back to you for Billy's best takeaway. But right now, it's my pleasure to introduce to the show Captain Mason Porter, Grand Slam Fishing Charters out of the Carolina Beach area. Thank you for making time for us, Mason. Happy to have you on the show.
Yes. Thank you all for having me. Pleasure to be here.
I like the hat. I like that you're representing. You represent in the trails. I mean, and now I finally get to talk fishing with you in depth and not just at a weigh-in when you tell me everything but what I want to know about where you caught the fish and on what. So here we go. Though before we have that conversation, as is tradition, there's 2 questions. You tell me you're ready. I'll give you question number 1.
Ready.
Question number 1, why should me, Billy, the audience, listen to anything you have to say about a redfish?
I guess just time on the water. That would be the number one thing. I'm a local guy, born and raised here. Went to community college here. So I've just spent a lot of time on the water, anywhere from Riceville Beach to Oak Island. And, redfish has always been something I've targeted since pretty much day one. I've hit every sandbar there is from Riceville Beach to Oak Island, and I'm working on the oyster rocks as we speak. So, covered a lot of ground, fished a lot of water, and that helps.
All right. Well, that works for question number 1. Question number 2, as tradition goes, is a non-fishing related question. I isolated Grand Slam in the Grand Slam fishing charters. I looked up Grand Slam on Urban Dictionary and decided we cannot use that as part of this bit. We cannot, but I'm subtly telling everyone to look up Grand Slam on Urban Dictionary is what I'm doing. But your question has to do with 4 of the more significant championships. I'll let you pick. Do you want this to be on tennis or on golf?
Oh, man. Definitely golf.
What are the 4 major championships that make up the Grand Slam
In golf?
in golf?
Oh. Jeez.
You're a fisherman. You're not expected to know, but I'm asking anyway.
In the PGA Tour?
PGA Championship. I'll take that as 1.
The Ryder Cup?
Nope, that's not considered a major. It is a huge event, but it's not considered a major.
What about the Wells Fargo?
No. The Masters. The PGA Championship.
The Augusta.
That's
the
Masters. U.S. Open. And then the Open Championship across the pond. You did great,
Yeah.
man. You did
Yeah,
fantastic.
Yeah,
We don't care
tennis
about
and
golf.
golf is not my forte.
I would have guessed that. I think that's part of the reason I went that angle. But let's put that down, man. Let's talk about fish. Let's get back to what we want to talk about. And I like your topics. I like starting out with bait selection. From what I understand, bait selection to you depends on time of year. So we're primarily focused on summer or early summer. So maybe start us there and then give us options when we're not talking early summer or summer.
Yeah, so I guess summer. I consider summer like basically mid-May. Once that water temperature gets up into the mid-70s. We're fortunate around here to have a good menhaden population in the river, and they seem to hang around from early May through the end of June. They start getting big at the end of June. So as far as bait selection, on high tide, I'm definitely cast netting menhaden every morning. It's a great oily bait. Can't beat it. There's no mullet around right now, so there's some small ones, but not the good ones you're looking for. So yeah, bait selection, definitely menhaden for the early summer.
So what's the perfect size menhaden for you?
It really just depends on the size of the fish. Redfish are pretty aggressive. If I feel like I'm on some lower slot fish, then I will try the 3 to 4 inch pogies, and try to throw the smaller ones. It's easier for them to eat the smaller ones. But if I'm in a tournament or fishing some up or over slot fish, then I'll throw anywhere from a 4 to 6 inch pogie. They have no problem eating that.
Is there a time in the calendar where you prefer a bait over menhaden?
Yes. So seems like about the end of June, you'll start to see the menhaden start to dwindle away. I'm not sure where they go, but they're harder to catch, and they seem, when you do catch them, they're bigger, like king mackerel size, bait size. But the mullet typically show up early July, and it seems like the redfish start to feed more on mullet than menhaden. I'm sure menhaden still works, if you find the right size. But yeah, once July rolls around, I'm cast netting, finger mullet in the 4 to 6 inch range, and fishing them the exact same way that I fish the menhaden.
All right, well, let's go to rigs then, and tell me how you're presenting this bait.
Yeah, so high tide, I fish a popping cork almost 90% of the time, I would say. I use a rig called the slip cork rig. It's a Billy Boy bobber. It's got a bobber stopper on it at the top so you can adjust the depth. You can go from fishing 1.5 foot of water to 3 or 4 foot of water really quickly. That's the advantage to that rig. Other than the popping cork. The popping cork, obviously, you can't adjust. but yeah, I fish a 4/0 circle hook. Gamakatsu, any brand is good. Just a good sharp pointed hook, and it's the Ricky Kellum special. I don't know if you know who Ricky Kellum is, but he uses it for trout a lot. But instead of a treble hook on there or a small kale hook, I use a circle hook for the drum.
And what are you using for the leader?
Leader size, usually 30-pound.
Okay. And is
20.
Do you believe that fluoro is important?
Yes, yeah, definitely fluorocarbon. I've never used anything other than fluorocarbon, and I use about a half ounce to 3/8 ounce weight. Seems like, sometimes the Menhaden or even the Mullet, they'll swim. Sometimes you're throwing a big enough bait that half ounce or 3/8 may not hold it down. So I may go up a little bit heavier than that, maybe to a 3/4, maybe. But usually you're fishing such shallow water that, that 3/8, 1/4 ounce to half ounce is all you need to keep that bait down enough.
Man, and I'm even going to ask you a couple more details. So are you more like a 2500 or more of a 3000? And then what size braid do you prefer? I mean, is casting distance important or having more substantial line important?
Yeah. I mean, the good line is definitely important. I throw the usually 20 to 30-pound Power Pro Super Slick. I used to use the regular Power Pro, but it gets a little tacky until you really break it in. So the Super Slick, super smooth casting, you can get long distance. Doesn't tend to knot up too bad on you. And 25 to 30-pound, and reel size anywhere from 2,500 to 4,000. I like to keep a few bigger 4,000s around. Just sometimes 28-inch redfish can pull some drag, so I like to be able to tighten down on them when I need to, and 4,000 can get that done. But for catching smaller fish, then it's fun to catch them on that light 2,500.
All right. Well, I'm gonna ask you. We're gonna transition, I think, into locations. But before we start talking about specific locations, I'm gonna ask you about the approach to this podcast, which is redfish on high tide. And again, that was your idea. I loved it. I love when captains get specific instead of trying to be too general. So what I wanted to ask is, do you prefer fishing for red drum on high tide? Does that give you opportunities that you look for, or is it that people struggle to catch red drum on high tide and you thought maybe I can help people catch fish when they don't normally catch fish? What was your thought when you decided on red drum on high tide?
Yes, red drum. I mean, it's something I've been comfortable with for I say probably 6 or 8 years now. I feel like I've really kind of patterned them, especially in the summertime. But you're gonna have to ask me that question again.
No problem. That's all right.
I forgot. What was it? Tell me again.
It's like, so you prefer fishing at high tide? I mean, you basically answer the question. You prefer high tide, or at least you enjoy a certain amount of success on high tide, rather than you picked high tide because you thought people struggled and you thought you might be able to help them out. You prefer high tide fishing.
Yeah, I mean, if I can get a light wind with a high tide, especially early in the morning, then I feel good about my chances, especially in the summer months from May to even mid-October, I would say. So yeah, it's just something I'm comfortable doing. I wouldn't say I've mastered the technique of it, but I know what to look for, what not to fish, and that can really increase your chances and give you a better chance of catching fish, really.
Man, that sounds like a great segue into what to look for, man. So for my audience, what should they be looking for if we're on a higher tide and they're fancy a red drum?
Yeah, so I mean, first thing you got to look at really is the weather. We all know, if you get a high tide with high winds, if it's blowing 20, 25, then, it makes it tough on high tide. So you got to look at the wind. If you have a heavier wind, I always try to keep the wind at my back. That's something very important for multiple reasons. It's better. You can get longer distance on your cast, further. You can stay further away from the fish, and your bait, stays in the strike zone longer. If you try to throw in, onto a point or a cove somewhere with the wind blowing at your face, yeah, you might get it to the grass, but it's going to stay on the grass for maybe 10 seconds, and then the bait's going to push off, and it's not going to be where it needs to be. So what I look for a high tide spot, I fish flats pretty much on high tide. That's my go-to. I fish anywhere from 1.5 feet to probably 4.5 feet of water. I look for coves, points, lots of oyster rocks. If you can get out there at low tide, a lot of times you can't get onto these flats at dead low tide, but you can still see where the oyster bars are, on a mid tide. So, do a little bit of scouting on a flat, on a lower portion of the tide, and then once that tide comes back in, those fish are going to push up onto those points, the back of those coves, and that's where I throw these popping corks. I try to keep the popping cork just off the bottom. I like my bait swimming. I don't like it to be hung up in the oyster bar. I like to see my cork dancing around. If it's hung up, then I'll pull it back in, shallow it up a little bit. So, just covering water, hitting points. I don't fish a spot too long, really. If I feel like I'm in good position, I'm making good casts with good baits, presenting my bait basically as good as I can, then, if I make 3 or 4 drifts through an area, then I'm moving on. That's my high tide strategy in a nutshell.
Okay, man. Well, I'm going to circle back. I'm going to ask some questions.
Yep.
So the flats that you like to target on high tide, are many of them dry at low tide or just unnavigable at low tide?
Yeah, they're dry, close to being dry. Certain areas, the back of the flats are dry. There's, there may be a little bit of water in there, little, I wouldn't even call them channels, but just little canals that hold some of the water that drains out. But yeah, there's 6 inches, maybe of water where I'm catching these fish out on high tide. So
okay. And most of the bottoms of these flats just muddy bottoms?
Yeah, mostly muddy bottoms. Where from the Carolina Beach area doesn't seem to have really sandy. Everything seems to be muddy in that area. So real muddy bottom, oysters, shells. Yeah.
Okay. And so you've already sort of talked about approach and talked a little bit about technique, but I'm going to back you up on that, man. So helping someone like me out who doesn't have the time on the water that you have, walk me through your thought process when you're pulling into a bay at high tide and, there's water everywhere and, there's some oyster rocks peppered throughout and there's points peppered throughout and coves. How do you know where to start and then how do you start? Like, walk me through what you do when you pull into an area or idle into an area, trolling into an area.
You obviously want to keep your eyes open, look on, if you're seeing birds on the bank or any, looking for fish busting. But as far as scattered oyster bars, I really don't, I will fish a scattered oyster bar, that's kind of in the middle of a flat, but I'm mostly going to get to the grass, the points and coves. And it's really just wind, depending on which way the wind's blowing. That can move fish for sure. So I'm going to pull into an area that I know that has some oyster bars or pockets in it, set up away from it and fish it.
So when you're targeting a point, are you power poled and locked, or are you constantly drifting on some level?
Yeah, so I like to shut the motor down early. The last thing you want to do is run up in into a bay and spook the fish that you plan to catch. So I try to shut the motor down early and put the trolling motor down and just kind of ease up in there. And then once I get to the area, that we're gonna fish, then I put the power pole down and try to be as still as possible. And that's definitely very important. I don't like the troll motor running at all when you're fishing that shallow.
All right, and now talk to me a little bit more about wind, because I like the concept about wind can affect the pattern of the fish. So are they more apt to be on a grass line that the wind's blowing on? Or are they more apt to be in the lee and the quiet of the wind, where there isn't much happening?
Yeah, it's really more the technique. I mean, you can throw, find that protected cove where the wind's, if the cove is protected, a lot of times the wind's going to be blowing in your face, So you can chunk a top water and do stuff like that in a protected cove. But for the technique that I like to do with the slip cork rig, I do feel like the fish tend to hold on more on the windier banks. Don't know why, but and also I think the main thing is you're able to present your bait and keep it in the strike zone longer. I think that's the main reason for why I keep the wind at my back when I'm fishing.
So do I gather that with a slip float rig or a popping cork rig, I'm on your boat, I'm not necessarily casting the cork so that it can have a long drift. I might be more casting the cork just so it'll stage up nicely in the general area you want it to stage up, rather than constantly letting out line and letting it move and move and move?
Yeah, we do a little bit of both. These flats, some points and coves have more current moving. But I do like it moving. I don't like it to be like a dead high tide. It can be tough. So I like the first hour or two of the fall or the last hour or two of the rise when there's still a little bit of current moving. That seems to get them biting better. But yeah, one thing I like to do, I can touch on when it's really high tide, like this morning the tide got up. It wasn't super high, but the grass was flooded. These fish could be anywhere. They could be swimming all through this grass. So, I told my guys we just need to find a hard grass bank, basically. That's what Christian calls it, but basically just a hard grass edge that is thicker grass than this, I guess, the spread out grass. So it kind of congregates them on that edge of the grass. They preventing them from getting up in the grass, basically. And we actually found some fish that way this morning, so that was cool.
So what was the question I was getting asked? Oh, I know. When you're setting your cork rig or setting the length of your leader on the popping cork, is the goal for it to be just off the bottom, like as close to the bottom without touching, without dragging? Is that the ideal?
Yeah, that's definitely ideal. And you'll know it. Your cork will be, especially with that rig, the slip cork rig, your cork will be laying flat typically if you're on the bottom. So you shallow it up, you throw it back out there. If you got a lively mullet or Menhaden on there, he'll be swimming in circles, and that's what you want to see. You want to see an active bait, a foot off the grass. And if that redfish is there, you got a good bait, then he's gonna hop on it 9 times out of 10.
All right, foot off the grass, as close to the bottom without dragging. Yep. And so this is just something I didn't even think to ask before, but it just came to mind. So are you pretty much exclusively throwing live bait, or is there a scenario where you chunk out cut bait on these float rigs?
I I try to throw live bait when I can. I've thrown a little bit of cut bait, certain times of year, but typically in the summertime I don't have too many issues getting live bait. So I'm chucking live bait. If it's windy, dirty water, which it can get that way down south a little bit, but then I may throw it, cut up a pogie, cut the head off, cut the tail, and just let it sit there to try to attract some attention with scent. But yeah, usually live bait if I can get it.
All right. So it seems to me, and man, you correct me if you've got a different experience, that it's easier to hook a mullet and keep a mullet frisky, harder to hook a live pogie and keep a live pogie frisky. What do you do? How do you hook your pogies?
Yeah, so I go basically through their nose. They have those two holes, in between the gills and their eyes. I hook them right through there, and you're gonna throw some pogies off. That's just the nature of it. They're not not quite as tough as the mullet, but it's definitely, the less you cast them, the less you reel them in, the livelier they're gonna be. So try to limit your casting and reeling in with the pogies, and make sure you get a live well full of them, because they're gonna fly off. With casting, you try to prevent people from whipping it. Try to do more of a steady, slower cast, and that goes back to wind. Usually, I got the wind at my back, so you do a kind of a rainbow cast, and it gets up in the wind, and usually it'll carry into the strike zone. And then if they fall short, if your cast comes up a little bit short, usually the wind or current will push you up on the bank. And I know you asked about current. I will let a bait drift down through a zone for sure. But if it gets off the bank 8 or 10 feet, then we're reeling in and restarting, trying to put it right back on that grass where those fish are feeding.
So what, in your opinion, what's more important, trying to stay 1 to 2 feet off the grass or trying to stay as close to the bottom as possible?
I would say being on the grass, because we're fishing 2 foot of water. Redfish will come up and smack a topwater plug. I've had them where the Menhaden is swimming on top of the water, and fish come up and hit it like a topwater plug, just absolutely destroy it. So yeah, I think being in the strike zone up on the grass is more important than having your bait down at the bottom. Those fish are if they're there, they're gonna find it.
Okay. And then I actually thought of another question while we were talking. So the slip float rig clearly has an advantage because you can adjust it quickly for the water depth.
Yep.
Do you find that the pop and cork provides an advantage at times because you're able to pop it? Do you see popping generating strikes, or it's really just another float mechanism?
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if I guess the popping cork does draw some strikes. I think it's more of like when you move the cork, it kind of wakes the bait back up a little bit. A lot of times baits, they can get hung in the oysters or whatever, or just kind of get in a spot where they're happy. So I just think moving your cork every 8 or 10 seconds, sometimes that wakes the bait back up and gets them back active. I do still throw popping corks. You can throw a DOA on a popping cork, or one thing I don't like to do is throw the Menhaden on the popping cork. It twists up really bad, just because the Menhaden typically swim in circles or some figure eights or whatever. So you'll get your popping cork back in. Your braid will be wrapped 25 times around the top of the cork. So that's one advantage to the slip cork rig that I did want to mention is I don't know what it is, the way the rig is, but it stays natural. Even when that minnow is down there doing circles, it's still, line stays tight, and you get way less tangles. better presentation.
All right, man. Well, we are coming to the end, but I got a couple of just sort of standard questions I often ask when I'm talking to a guy. So as far as early summer redfish on high tide, what's the main piece of advice you would give someone watching, listening to this podcast to help them succeed?
Main piece of advice, bait's important. And if you want to catch quality fish, you got to find some live bait. So go, you can find it in the waterways, but if you go to the Cape Fear River, look for the pelicans diving. They're not always, they move around a lot, but not typically too far. I would find good fresh bait and, fish a flat that doesn't have much water on it, low tide, and tie you a slip cork rig on or a popping cork, and just fish some oyster points. These fish are going, they're going to sit near oysters. They're going to be on top of oysters or near oysters. Not saying they won't be on a bank, but you're increasing your chances a lot better when you're fishing structure. And keep the wind at your back, and don't be afraid to try new stuff. You'll be surprised how trying new stuff will reward you. So.
All right, I think I'm down to my final two questions. The first of those final two questions are, anything else I didn't set you up to say, man? Any question I didn't ask? Anything that came to mind after we moved off of a topic? Anything else you want to share?
Yeah, I think we got it. Bait selection, techniques, rigs. This pattern that pattern will work through October, November, from now through the rest of the summer and even into November. So I think we nailed it on the head. I'm sure there's some other things out there, but
no, we did. We covered a lot of ground. I just like to ask that question just to make sure. And then my last question would be, Mason, other than summer redfish, tell me a little bit more about Grand Slam. Like, what else you're doing? What are you doing in the spring? What else are you doing in the summer? And what are you doing in the fall?
Yeah, so springtime was we had a pretty good spring this year. We targeted a lot of black drum, a lot of quality size black drum in the 3 to 8 pound range. Very fun fish to catch in the spring. A lot of times when you find them, they're grouped up. You still got redfish around in the spring, trout. Flounder fishing is unfortunate right now, but there's you can still catch them. Just got to release them until September. So usually summertime for me is red drum, some black drum scattered around, maybe some early morning trout and flounder. Trying to work on my sheep's head fishing. That's a tough gig, but trying to work on that because that's a quality fish to target in the summertime. And then as we get into fall, I love trout fishing. October, November, December, great time for trout. Black drum around, red drummer, schooling up. So, it's a year-round deal for me.
Well, Captain Mason Porter, Grand Slam Fishing Charters, appreciate you spending some time with us and talking to us about early summer red drum on higher tides, man. It's been a good talk.
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully it'll help somebody go out there and catch a few fish.
I think it will, man. You have a good summer, and we'll check in with you later.
All right, take it easy, Gary.
Bye, Mason.
See ya.
Billy.
All right, Gary, what a good show, man. What a good show. Good. It's fun being in the studio again.
It is.
Just kind of hanging out, checking out, seeing what you guys are talking about, all that fun stuff. So, anyway, I'm nerding out a little bit over here. I'm not gonna lie.
Right.
I'm not gonna lie. Anyway,
Nerd out on the AC while you're over there.
no, the AC's broken, bro. This is one thing I learned from Puerto Rico. You don't need AC, all right? Oh man, good episode, man. Appreciate Mason coming on, and I guess my best takeaway. I'll tell you my best takeaway or my best encouragement, because I've fished with a slip float rig before, and those things produce, man. They are surprisingly producers of fish. And the first time I ever fished with one, I was like, holy smokes, what am I casting and reeling and casting and reeling when I should just throw this thing out there and let the current, rip it, and then and watch that thing. It's like old school bobber fishing, you know?
It is.
So yeah, man, that is a rig that does produce, man, and I will second that and take that away. It's a good reminder for me to go, oh yeah, I better go make sure I got one of those for when I get out. And
Yeah,
do some
man. A
fishing.
lot of our captains use them, man. They're effective.
Yeah. They're great, man, and they're fun too. They're fun to watch float down the waterway and then disappear, and you're like, it's on, fish on, let's go. So it's a pretty cool feeling. Makes you that nostalgia from being 5 again.
I think that absolutely counts as a Billy's best
Yeah.
takeaway. I'll
That's
take
a good
that.
one. Yeah, so run to your local tackle shop and get one. So, but yeah, man, want to throw a thank you back to our sponsors again: Marine Warehouse Center for sponsoring the show, Bland Landscaping Company for sponsoring the episode, and Academy Sports for sponsoring the episode as well. Really appreciate all 3 of those sponsors. And I'll put this out there: if you want to be a sponsor of the show, if you have a business that would fit the fishing industry, reach out to me. It's billy@fishermanspost.com, and we'll see what we can come up with. So I know Marine Warehouse and Bland and Academies had a lot of fun, and we have a lot of fun with them. I mean, when Emmett's not pillow fighting, we have a lot of fun.
Adorable.
Adorable. And,
Emmett's adorable.
I mean, I'm sure he'll be somewhere crazy next week. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see where my Photoshop skills take him.
I'm in. I'm already excited.
Well, Gary, appreciate it, man, and we'll catch you in the next one.